everyone, I am Greyson, and welcome to Carnage Candy. Sean and I both thought it would be a great idea to kick off this channel by talking about horror movies that shaped us into the horror fans that we are today. And today we're going to talk about my horror movies that shaped me into the horror fan that I am. And to kick it off, I'm beginning with John Carpenter's Halloween. This film means a ton. It was the first movie that ever made me cry by just hearing the theme song.
What? Okay, so so what do you mean?
So the main Halloween theme song, you know, the one that's used in every Halloween film, anytime that song would go off, I thought as a child that meant that Michael Myers was coming.
Like the first time you hear it, like at the intro screen, did you think? Or was it like once you saw him in conjunction with the song, like he was coming?
So my introduction to Halloween was through a TV spot trailer. Okay. So it was like, on Fox this Saturday, Halloween will be showing at 12 a.m. Uh-huh. And then it would play the theme, and then Michael Myers would walk out. So I thought that whenever that song would play, it just summoned Michael Myers. Anytime that went off, I would run away and hide because I thought, oh no, Michael Myers is coming to my house. I have to hide. Now, as I got older, my oldest brother realized how big of a fear that I had of Halloween and Michael Myers, and decided that he would buy a Michael Myers costume and would basically chase me every Halloween night. A couple of years later, I decided I was going to be brave after my brother had terrified me 2 years in a row, and I was going to sit down on the couch and I was going to be a big boy and watch it all by myself. I had to see what exactly happened to Michael Myers in this film. I sat there and I was just taken away by how scary and also how interesting this movie was. You have Donald Pleasance running around the whole time trying to stop him. You've got Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode being just the most brave person you've ever seen in your life.
If she can do it, you can do it.
If she can do it, you can do it. Yeah, exactly. If she can be that brave, why can't you? Mm-hmm. And then you've got something that I'd never seen in a movie before. You have a villain that cheats. He cheats because he puts on a costume that a girl's boyfriend was wearing and tricks her, and then he kills her.
What do you mean cheat?
He puts on the ghost costume.
You can't costumeception.
Yeah, you already got one mask on. Why are you gonna put another costume on? But thankfully, Donald Pleasance shows up at the end, saves the day, or does he? At the end of the film, Michael Myers has disappeared. You don't know what happens. You're just sitting there wondering, is he still alive? Was he a ghost? Did he just disappear? You don't know. And that right there was what kicked me into looking at other Halloween films, and truly what made me a big fan of slashers as well. So after I got done watching all the Halloween films, I needed something else in the slasher genre. And I knew that my oldest brother, who was named Jason, was a big fan of the Friday the 13th films. So I picked one of his movies out, and it was Jason Takes Manhattan. Now, this is not the Friday the 13th film I'm going to talk about, but this was the first one I ever watched. So I sat through Jason Takes Manhattan, and I just thought, man, how is this guy scary? You know?
Yeah, I think Jason Takes Manhattan was the one I rented the most. I think it had the most kid-friendly cover.
It
was him over, like, all of New York. So.
I got done watching it, and I talked to my brother, and I told him, like, I don't understand why people are scared of Jason Voorhees. It makes no sense. And that's when he went over to his collection and he handed me Friday the 13th Part 4. I looked at the cover, I saw the bloody Jason mask, and I said, okay, let's give this a go. Now, at this point in time, I had never really experienced a movie that had gore in it, but let me tell you something. This movie had tons of it. The movie kicks off, you see a guy get his head twisted and cut with a bone saw at the same time, and little Greyson didn't have a clue what was going on. This was also the first time that I was actually scared of Jason because he was just violent in this film. There was no slow moving, no teleporting. Like, you saw him move everywhere he was going to go. You saw him run after his victims. You saw him just do the most violent things you had ever seen anybody do in a film.
Which is way different than Michael Myers.
It is. Yeah. Michael is more, he's very, very quiet, whereas Jason is just going loud the whole time. But the thing that really got to me, there was a kid that was in danger in this movie. It never really stuck with me that children could be in trouble. So this was the first film that really was like, oh man, at any point in time, something could happen to me. And it stuck with me. It was what really made me go, oh man, this is scary, but it's also super interesting. This can happen. So it made me kind of dive deeper into the horror genre, all because of Friday the 13th Part 4.
Yeah.
Like it's a fourth film in a franchise, and it's the one that really made me go, hey, there is so much more out there in this horror genre that I can get into.
Would you say it's the best Friday the 13th?
Without a doubt. Sean, I know they're going to make fun of me for this.
Okay.
My next film is Jaws 3D.
3D. I know you're scared of sharks, but why that one?
There's a scene when they're in this, I think it's like an underwater, like science facility or something.
Yeah, some kind of observation deck where they're watching the fish.
Yeah.
And because it's at a water park.
And you see the shark coming in towards the window.
With the shitty 3D effect.
With the awful 3D effect.
Yeah.
He looks almost like he's cardboard.
Yeah, exactly. Classic.
But,
it's the scene.
Yeah, he crashes in and he eats everybody in the room, and I had enough. I ran out of the room, screaming, crying, couldn't do anything.
How
My
old
mom
were
put me
you?
to bed. I was 7 or 8, I want to say.
Is this so? Had you seen Jaws 1 before this?
No. Jaws 3D was the first Jaws movie I ever saw.
Gotcha. Okay.
I didn't watch Jaws until I was, I think I was like 17.
So the genesis was literally the shark coming into your living room and killing you.
I thought Jaws 3D was the first film
Gotcha.
because I didn't understand that 3D was the third one in those sets at that time.
So shitty movie, but you walked in at the wrong time and it scarred you for life.
I didn't walk in. I watched it the whole time.
Yeah,
and
I
then
got you.
it scarred me. I remember waking up at night to go to the bathroom. The movie had been off for a couple of hours, and I'd gone to bed and woke up to go to the bathroom. I walk in, and I lift up the toilet seat and immediately think, oh my God, what if he comes out of the toilet? I started screaming that Jaws is going to get me, and just screamed until my mom came and got me. This movie ended up giving me my fear of the ocean and of sharks, but it also did something else quite special. Because years later, whenever we got lucky and got cable, I had been just kind of channel surfing around, and I'd stuck on a channel for a little while, and the next movie that was coming on was Jaws 3D. Now, I knew if I watched this film, it was going to cause me to just have the worst nightmares I've ever had. It's the only film that I can watch now that will just give me awful nightmares. And because of this film, it led me to my next one, which is my fourth one on my list. I go over 2 channels, and there's this movie, and it starts off in an airport, and it's raining, and it says Suspiria. Now, I had no idea what Suspiria was. And it didn't really give me any info because this is back whenever cable was first around, so you didn't get that much info. It just gave you like year.
And it's not like there's horror publications out there to
not
say
at all.
like you should watch Suspiria. It's a great horror movie.
I mean, there's like Fangoria out. I'm not buying Fangoria. I'm not looking at internet forums to see what horror movies a 12-year-old or however old I was needs to be watching.
Yeah.
But I see it, and it says like made in 1977 and witches and a ballerina training camp or something like that on that. So I was like, okay, well, how scary can this be? Like, there's no way this can be as scary as Jaws 3D is. Oh, boy. After the airport happens and you see, your main characters and she has a friend, there's this scene to where she's being chased by something and you don't know what it is. But as she's trying to get away, she runs into this room and she looks up and she sees this window. It's just a sliding window that she can get in. So I'm like, yeah, get up there. You can get away. It's going to be fine. We'll continue on and see what happens. She climbs up through the window and goes into the next room and falls into a pit of barbed wire. I could not believe what I was seeing. I had seen Jason do mean things, but I'd never seen somebody accidentally fall into something that took over the scene.
You've never seen somebody have an accident.
No, and it and it probably was, in the script it was probably like, oh, they set this up for her to fall in. I don't know. But she falls in, and I just remember thinking she's in a room with barbed wire and this person is still chasing her. And then the door opens up and she gets her throat slit, and at that point I don't know what's going on. I'd never seen something look like this before. I never knew that there were horror movies outside of the United States, honestly. I
Yeah.
didn't know what an Italian horror movie was. I didn't
And
really
that's so
comprehend
different than basically
Yeah.
because and I mean, with all due respect to Michael and Jason, it's like these are mascots chasing people.
It's very meat and potatoes with them, you know?
Yeah, there's
it's-
something more to an unknown assailant, right?
It's,
Like,
you know, I see Jason, Michael, and Freddy, and, you know, Leatherface, and so on, as the almost comfort food of horror movies. Whereas when you get to Suspiria, it's like you're watching one of your nightmares unfold on the TV.
yeah,
So I see this happen. I did like you did while you were watching The Exorcist, and I put my hands up, and I was scared because there's this witch in it, and the makeup's on her was so terrifying. But it's also kind of beautiful in another way.
oh my
the way
god,
it's shot.
the color palette of Suspiria is insane.
Every single scene of that movie, there's just some color that is popping, and it's so bright and it's so interesting that no matter what, you can't look away.
Yeah,
you have to stare at it.
It's just neon soaked and just so juxtaposed with these blaring. It's like it's like it's overexposed or something on purpose.
It's perfect. Like, looking back at it now, like, if you hear the premise, you're like, oh, you know, it might be okay. But once you watch the film, you realize how truly amazing it really is. And by doing so, this led me into just literally going down a rabbit hole of just finding anything else that I could, jumping out of just the United States with horror and going into Italian horror movies, and then going into Korean horror movies, and just seeing like what all my brain could take in. And honestly, if it wasn't for Suspiria, I probably wouldn't end up with some of my favorite films of all time.
All thanks to Jaws 3D. And your really weird fear of sharks.
It is, and it's so stupid, and that's why, like, no matter what I do, I have to be like, man, Jaws 3 turned me into the horror fan that I am. These were the 4 horror movies that turned me into the horror fan that I am. I hope you enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun putting this together. Hopefully you will watch more videos that we have put up. This is just the first couple of ones that we have. And if you have to be watching this years later whenever we've done it, now you have an understanding on why I like the movies that I like and why I don't. Make sure to subscribe to see more videos like this, and make sure to check out Sean's video so you can understand what horror movies made him as well. I've got it right here, and I'm going to wait for you to click it. Just go ahead. You can do it.